How do I survive the interview season? I put together this quick survival summary that I felt was really necessary to just kind of come across to you guys, and we'll kind of go through each one line by line. Use the keywords the interviewer is looking for. I cannot stress this enough to you guys that you're not using the correct jargon that that these candidates are used to hearing. And so one thing I like to say is, people might have this interpretation that step one being pass fail is great. You no longer have to study as hard. But to me, there's quite a possibility that the match is going to become much harder. And they're now going to be focusing more on the work that you're doing, the research that you're doing. How are you contributing to the medical community? And so there's going to be a change and shift in focus. And if you look at some of the candidates who are actually AMGs, these individuals from their first degree are having a background in computational data analysis. They're working in genetic labs. They're doing all of these endless things. And so over time, they're learning the jargon of how to create a career. What is the terminology that we use in this profession? And a lot of you you're not bringing this into the conversation. And so I think it's really important to highlight this. So what do I mean by keywords? When you ask about a career choice in medicine, there's different ways to phrase things. Like I like to always think of myself as being a clinician educator. I think medicine has been an apprenticeship for 2,000 years. And without this history of apprenticeship, we would never be where we are today. And so I really am passionate about continuing this practice and continuing as a clinician educator. Or I want to continue growing the field of medicine. I see myself as a physician scientist. I think there is an opportunity for me in the biomedical space in industry, right? There are so many opportunities to highlight different career paths. And yet a lot of people, based on what I've been hearing, is that you're coming in and being like, I want to be a community doctor. First of all, yes, I commend community physicians. We need them. They're an integral part of our society. So instead of just flat out using, I want to be a community doctor, highlight what the strength is. Use the tools in your toolpan. Correct? I definitely think so. So what are some of the other words that they want to hear? I mentioned one earlier, empathy, collaborative, right? These are words that you want to start, teamwork, that you want to start practicing over and over and over. And sometimes, I think the funny thing is when I was a resident, I'm human. I bombed my first two interviews. I had no idea that this was something I was supposed to be doing. Nobody told me. And I used to go into the shower and just say these words aloud over and over and over until eventually they were a natural part of my conversation. I think it's so important. We're moving into this space of ensuring health equity, ensuring that we are caring appropriately for our diverse patient population. How are we improving the quality of care? And how are we effectively delivering care to people with optimizing the health utilization? So these are words that you guys need to learn, and without practicing them on a daily basis, they're not going to come out into your conversation. Use strategies to fill the gaps. You're never going to be prepared for every question. And I used to sit there thinking, should I sit there and memorize every single one of these? How can I prepare? And then when I realized that I can never be prepared for every single question after going through the residency interview, season, I just thought to myself, wow, okay, I need strategies here. And so some of the two main strategies I always like to tell you guys, it's, repeat back the question. Say, hey, that's a really good question. You definitely provide insights into that. And I understand what you're asking is XYZ, right? So you want to make sure if you don't have the answer, have a strategy to buy yourself some time, right? And the answer will come to you. And if it doesn't, you want to make sure you've given an example of how you may have perceived that answer. Know your CV. I cannot express this enough to you guys. I definitely think this one is common sense, but you would be surprised. Make sure you know your CV and your personal statement from back to front. Deliver every answer with the most charismatic version of yourselves. And I always like to touch on this point because I feel like a common question that the panelists are asked, well, how can I be charismatic? That's not something we can teach, okay? What you need to do is you need to practice. You need to practice in the language that you're going to be doing in the interview. And you need to sort of reflect back. And what I used to like to do is I used to like to record myself and listen back to myself. And I used to be like, oh my God, is that how I sound? And I realized that my accent I could turn into a strength if I just learned to control the way that I speak. And what do I mean by that? Well, when I want to deliver a message and sound super enthusiastic, I speed it up. And then when I want to highlight something or think about the words I'm going to use, I take a pause and I process what I'm going to say. And the way that you intonate, the way that you deliver a message, it makes a huge difference because you can find yourself rambling and being very circumferential if you just don't take a second to pause and listen to what you're saying. So anticipating the length of an answer that is appropriate for each question. And what do I mean by this? And I like to think of the way to phrase an answer is in your mind. You need to decide what kind of answer am I going to get. So let's take an answer and it has two lengths. Okay. You have the short end and you have a long narrative. So the short, sweet answer is appropriate if you're a strong candidate in speaking and you know that you're prepared to answer anything. So it's okay to deliver a message in a very short, sweet answer. But just so you know, the quicker you answer, the more questions you open yourself up to, especially if you're not delivering the answer to the effect of what the interviewer wants to hear. And then you have the long narrative, which has 2 points to it. It can be good in the sense that do you have a story to tell that you can deliver in a memorable way that is in a meaningful way to the person that you're speaking to? Or are you going to ramble on and on and on and on? Because if you're going to do that, that's an absolute no. But if you have a story to tell, the long-winded answer can be a very useful tool because it also takes up time where you have less questions to be asked. And then there's a sweet spot, which is in the middle, where you've effectively delivered the answer. You've said something very memorable, and you're not being too circumferential. Answer the question you're asked. Time and time again, a lot of panelists say that candidates are not answering the questions that they're asked. Listen to what the interviewer is asking. Take a pause and then answer. Because sometimes what happens is you guys don't answer the question and then you go around in circles. And at the end of it, you realize, oh my God, I did not answer the question. Understand the medical jargon of a career in the US, and we went over this point. Avoid controversial topics. I think this one is a little bit self-explanatory. Be prepared to have questions about the program and ensure they're not offensive. I have definitely seen candidates come in throughout my time and my career in the medical field come in and have pretty offensive questions. And you would be surprised how the things that trickle down. So you want to make sure you have questions to ask about the program, but you also want to deliver that question to show that the program is a strong one in your eyes, okay? And that you really want to be there. Because if you come in with a rude or offensive question and the program director or a fellow or a resident hears these types of questions, it's just not a good look, okay? I really like this point because I feel like the US residency process it's just such a difficult process. And I feel like sometimes you can feel really beaten down by it. And we've all been there. We all know what it is. And so sometimes a lot of people tend to say, like, mention their limitations and a lot about and negative things and negative comparisons to what their US clinical experience is compared to their foreign experience, or just as a slight example, but never mention anything negative without a positive spin. How did you learn from this situation? Use the tools in your toolbox. I feel like one of the main feedbacks that I've been hearing from panelists is that students and candidates come in and they don't want to effectively deliver the message that shows them in a good light. Only talk about your strengths. If you are going to deliver a weakness, show the strength that you deliver, that you created or you earned from this situation or scenario. And practice, practice, practice. There, I mean, without a doubt, without practice, you will not be perfect. I think even to this day, at my stage in my career, when I have an oral presentation to give about my research, I present it to my mom. She has no clue about what I'm talking about, but it's the delivery of the message. Can I send this message to anybody?